Let me start with a question. Has your child ever spent hours revising, completed all of their homework, attended tuition, and yet their GCSE maths grade barely moved? If so, you're not alone. In fact, it's probably the single most common concern I hear from parents. They look at the effort their child is putting in and they think, they're working so hard. Why isn't it making a difference? And that's exactly what we're going to explore in this video. Because the truth is, most students who are stuck in GCSE maths, they're not lazy. Most are simply missing a system. I've had countless conversations with parents who tell me exactly the same things. You know, my child is revising. They're completing all of their homework. They're attending tuition. But nothing seems to be changing. And I completely understand. Let me just move my face so I'm not blocking anything. And I completely understand how frustrating that can feel. And as a parent, it's difficult watching your child put in genuine effort and still feel disappointed when the results come back. But here's the more important thing. The most important thing is that they usually put in effort. They usually put in a lot of effort. The problem is that effort alone doesn't guarantee progress. Okay? This is a big myth. One of the biggest myths, I would say, is that in education, in academics, more effort is equal to better grades. It sounds logical, it does. Work harder, revise for longer, get better results. But GCSE maths doesn't work that way. I've worked with many students who've spent 10 hours a week revising and they barely improve. And on the flip side to that, I've worked with students who've spent much less hours than that revising, but they've made rapid progress, a lot of progress. The difference isn't the effort they're putting in. The difference is whether that effort is being directed towards the right thing. Let's move on. And let me move my face again. When a student isn't improving, parents often assume the issue is motivation. But in my experience, that's rarely the real problem. Most struggling students are dealing with one of these three things: a strategy problem, a diagnosis problem, or a confidence problem. In other words, they don't know exactly what's holding them back and they don't know how to fix it. And after repeated setbacks, they start losing belief in themselves. The result is a lot of activity, a lot of productivity, but very little progress. Let's move on. Over the years, I've found that almost every student who feels stuck falls into one or more of these four categories. Okay, so we've got the knowledge gap, we've got exam technique, let me move my face again, exam technique, lack of structure, or lack of confidence. And the reason why this matters is because each problem requires a completely different solution. You can't solve an exam technique problem by doing more revision. You can't solve a confidence problem by simply telling a student to work harder. First, you need to identify what's actually going on with the student. So let's take a deep dive into each of these. First is the knowledge gaps. This is probably the most common issue I do see. GCSE maths is a cumulative subject. Every new topic is built on previous knowledge. So when a student struggles with algebra, the problem isn't always algebra. Sometimes the real issue is a weakness in fractions that started many years ago. The student keeps practicing algebra questions, but because the foundation is weak, progress feels painfully slow and sometimes stagnant. No amount of extra effort can fully compensate for a missing foundation. Let's use an analogy to get the point across. Imagine trying to build a second floor on top of an unstable foundation. Problems are going to keep on appearing. No progress is going to be made. And that's exactly what happens in maths. If core skills are not secured, everything built on top of that become unstable. and learning newer things become even more difficult. The solution is not always to push harder. The solution is to strengthen the foundations. Let's move on. The second hidden cause is exam technique, and this one actually surprises many parents. A lot of students, a lot of students actually know much more maths than their grade actually suggests. The issue is that they lose marks unnecessarily in the exam. They don't show enough working. They misread questions. They rush. They make avoidable mistakes. And in GCSE maths, understanding the method is important. I'm not saying it's not, but understanding how marks are awarded is just as important, if sometimes even more. So let's keep on going. I know I have to keep moving my face, so I do apologize. Now, I've seen students correctly choose the right method, complete most of the question completely correctly, and then lose marks because of one small mistake at the end. The knowledge clearly was there because they were able to answer the question, but they didn't get all of the marks. In this case, exam technique, is the problem. And now, fortunately, exam technique is a skill. But unfortunately, it's a skill many students have never been taught explicitly in their schools. Let's move on. Lack of structure. This is the third one. Most students revise based on what feels familiar. They watch a few videos, they complete random worksheets, they jump between topics, and at the end of the week, they feel busy but haven't actually moved forward. Okay? Effective revision is completely different. It starts by identifying the weaknesses, then prioritizing the areas that will have the biggest impact on their grade, then following a clear plan. That's what turns effort into results. I know I'm brushing across this soon, but we will go into more detail in further videos. So, random versus targeted revision. One of the biggest differences between improving students and stuck students is this exact thing. Improving students know exactly what they're revising, right? And when to revise it. But stuck students don't, okay? Targeted revision is far more powerful than random revision. In fact, a student can often revise less overall and still achieve better results if they're focusing on the right things. Okay? This is how important it is. And we will go into more detail on this, I promise. Now, the fourth thing, and this really gets me, this one. Many parents think that confidence comes first. Actually, confidence usually comes last, and it comes from evidence. When a student repeatedly struggles, what do? Well, what happens to them? Their confidence drops. Let me move my face here. Their confidence drops. And when their confidence drops, what do? They avoid difficult questions. And when they avoid difficult questions, their results become poor. And the cycle continues. The cycle is a vicious cycle, and we don't want any student to be in the cycle. Confidence is built through progress. Okay? That's why simply telling a child to be more confident almost never works. Now, if there's one thing I want you guys to take from this video, is this. Most students don't need more effort. They need more clarity. They need structure. They need direction. And more importantly, they need a system that helps them build confidence through success and progress that they can see. And when those things are in place, effort finally starts producing the results we want, you want, and your child wants. And finally, the question now isn't how can my child work harder? The real question is, what is actually holding them back? Because until we know that, any revision plan is simply guesswork. And in the next video, I'm going to show you exactly how to diagnose what's preventing your child from improving and how to identify which type of student they are. And that's where real progress is going to begin. Thank you for your time. I'll see you next time.